Right. Okay, everyone, you're all very welcome to the ConnectED seminar series, where we connect our students, alumni, and industry partners with thought leaders to explore key trends and challenges that are facing industry and society. And I'm very pleased to welcome Roger McNamara today. He's Director of B2B Acceptance Visa. Roger is based in Florida, although I should mention he studied his undergrad here in Dublin. So he's very familiar with certainly this city. Roger is a veteran of the payments industry. He's been working in that sector for over 30 years, and he's closed some very large deals in card acceptance across multiple sectors and industries globally. And based on that experience in selling those very complex deals, it prompted Roger to devise some sales training for companies to roll out to their teams to help them in selling. And for the purpose of today's seminar, Roger is going to talk about the psychology and art of selling. So he's distilled some of his thinking in relation to the human side of the sales engagement, let's say personality and human behavior and relationships, that he's going to share with us over the course of the next hour. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Roger.
Justine, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you to you and Aisling from TU Dublin. Full disclosure, I was born in the US, went back to Ireland when I was about 8, went to boarding school, college, got my first job, and then emigrated from Ireland in 89. I am alum of TU Dublin, but prior to it being called TU Dublin, I was a graduate of the College of Marketing and Design in Parnell Square. So the education served me well across the board. Just a brief little history on my selling background. So I graduated with a degree in marketing administration. My first role was with a company that no longer exists in Ireland, but you may know the name. It was called Airgas. It was part of Irish Shell. And I started in the sales office as a sales assistant, I would guess the title was. And within about a year, I graduated up to a sales rep for Shell in Leinster, and did that for 3 years before I emigrated. When I came to the US, I had intended to change careers. So if you see planes around me, I fully intended to be a commercial pilot. That didn't work out. And I got back into selling, and I started working for a company called ADP. If any of you guys know the payroll business, ADP is the largest payroll processor in the US. Spent about 2 years there. Wasn't my favorite sales job, but I did learn some very valuable tools in working for ADP. And one of those was that as a salesperson, to move on, success is key. No one wants a mediocre salesperson. So did rather well at ADP, and then got an offer to go to a career-changing job with American Express. Didn't realize that at the time, but started off as a local rep, eventually graduated up to a national salesperson for Amex, became the only salesperson in the national space for Amex for about 15 years. Justine, I appreciate the kudos. Signed about $300 billion worth of business for Amex over time. You know, household names that you guys know if you've been to the States: JetBlue, you know, the Silver Seas Cruises, SeaWorld, you know, Tractor Supply, most of the major retailers. Over time, I had interaction in selling those. In my job was not in the card side, it was on the acceptance side. So getting those merchants to accept that card for payment. A challenge because Amex has always been viewed as the most premium priced product in the space. After about 30 years with Amex, I left. I went and I started a sales training company. It's still in operation today, and my wife runs it on a daily basis. And we train in a very specific field of the bank card world. And then about 2 years ago, I started a role here at Visa, where I am the director of B2B acceptance. So I deal with the largest 77 B2B merchants in the US and encouraging them to grow their business on the Visa network. So that's kind of my resume. Be loads of time in the end for Q&A. But let me kind of tell you what I'm going to take you through today. Over my career, I can tell you that I've focused a great deal on the science of selling and the psychology of selling. And some would say that selling is in itself an art. But it starts, and it is sometimes difficult for us to establish what our identity is. I use this phrase all the time when I'm talking to people. If you were watching mothers with their children when they're small in a playground, and if they chat to one another, they might say, little Johnny or little Annie or little Rebecca, wants to be a doctor or a lawyer when they grow up. But you very seldom will ever hear that parent say, yeah, little Johnny wants to grow up to be a salesperson. It's just not something that we seem to be proud of in our culture. Sales has somewhat of a stigma attached to it. And when you ask a non-salesperson about a salesperson, they have some very definitive perceptions of what that means. So I just throw out for you here kind of a whimsical slide to let you see what the world kind of thinks. And as you can see in the top left corner, selling what my friends think I do. They think I can go to the pub and have a few drinks with my customers, and that's the end of it. What my mom thinks I do, and that is that she thinks I sit in boardrooms all day and I present to CEOs. What society thinks I do, and this is one where the used car salesman comes into place. And again, bottom left, what my customers think I do. They think salespeople are money grubbers and sit there and all they do is count their commissions all day. And then what I think I do, which is herd cats all day, because I have a complex sales structure, a complex sales environment, politics within my own organization, everything. And then there's finally what I actually do. And that is, I sit most days at my office answering emails, putting out fires, trying to find people to talk to. It's an extremely challenging profession. But having said all that, the reason that most people get into sales but don't admit that they get into sales is because sales can be very rewarding. And there's no need to be apologetic about that. I often give training classes and I ask this question, why have you gotten into sales? And people say, because I'm a people person. And I say, you don't really believe that. Why people want to be in sales is because they're good with people and they figured out how to monetize that. Because if you are a good people person, if you can speak, if you can interact, if you can do that well, chances are you will be successful in sales. Doesn't mean that we can't have good introvert salespeople. There's some excellent introvert salespeople. Doesn't mean that only extroverts are good salespeople, but it's important to realize what your identity is. So, when we're in sales, one of the things that we really want to guard against is we're afraid sometimes to what our customers think about us. And we're afraid sometimes that we might be a little too pushy or challenging or difficult to deal with, or we're persistent and, we're manipulative and we lie. I can tell you this is a common misperception. Having spent over 30 years in selling, I don't ever recall telling somebody a falsehood or a lie. There's no need to. Giving someone bad news in the sales process and having them still stick around means you're doing it right. There is no need to stretch the truth. It is what it is. A lot of time businesses just want to know what the process is. For example, let me give you this in typical sales. Generally, there's a product or something that has to be delivered in most cases, and a shipment date is given to the client where the client says, okay, I'm going to receive shipment on the 11th. If that date is not realistic, there is no point as a salesperson sticking to that date. Yeah, you know what? I'm working on it. You're going to get it on the 11th. It's much better, in my opinion, to be able to say to that person, hey, listen, we shot for the 11th. It's not going to work. I know it's probably going to cause you some concern, but here's what we're doing. We're going to try and get it to you there on the 12th. It's not going to show up in the 11th. People can take bad news. What they can't take is being driven somewhere else with some other story that doesn't apply. So I would tell you that it's very important for us to set the time frame. One of the other things that I'm pretty big on in my selling environment is this level playing field between salespeople and customers. And it is great to be nice, but as a salesperson, we have to make sure that our playing field is level. Let me give you an example. I'm very much against any salesperson telling a customer that they're thankful for their time. Now, you might think that that's odd because we need to be respectful. You can be respectful, but I believe that your time is just as valuable as the customer's time. And I think when we are able to communicate that our time is valuable in a very professional way, we kind of set that agenda in place here so the customer realizes, hey, I can't string X or Y along here. You know what? They are important too. They shared information with me that I didn't know, and it tends to level that playing field. If you're genuflecting or you're on bended knee before your customer, generally your customer will have you on the run, and that's not a good place to be. It has to be a very professional, give-take relationship in sales. I'm providing something of value, you're purchasing something that has value, and that's the way it works best. So let's delve a little bit into setting the standard, because I think this is very key. And I'm going to share a little video here. Hopefully you'll get a chuckle out of it here in a second. But the research says that as a salesperson, in the first 5 to 10 seconds of an interaction with somebody, you have already made up your mind whether the person's credible or not. In fact, everyone on this call today has made that determination about me. I came on, I gave you a brief history of what I'm about and what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. And some of you have already decided that in the first 5 to 10 seconds. So imagine as a salesperson, when we have an interaction with a client, they're doing the same thing to us. And the research shows that in that first 5 to 10 seconds, that client is looking to see 3 things. And they're looking to see, 1, is the person that I'm dealing with sharp? Are they an expert in the language they use? Now, it's really hard to get that in the first 5 to 10 seconds, but there are little keys and elements that you'll use in your vocabulary that will give them that clue. There will be euphemisms that you have that we need to all work on to cut out of our dialogue that will allow us not to advance. Words like or or things like that that people say repeatedly within that first 5 to 10 seconds. And then the third thing that's really important to people in sales is, and this one is kind of cheesy a little bit, but it's enthusiastic. Now, I don't mean unbridled enthusiasm. I mean genuine enthusiasm. I mean that you're awake, alive, have a pulse. You know, if you were to be asked a question, you're able to articulate back an answer. Those are important things that people see. So let me stop sharing here for a minute. I want to share this clip with you to see if you guys know this clip and how it resonates with you.
With very little downside risk. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yeah, I may have said so.
Okay, great. Well, reason for the call today, John, is something just came across my desk, John. It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. If you have 60 seconds, I'd like to share the idea with you. You got a minute? Name of the company, Aerotine International. It is a cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest awaiting imminent patent approval on a next generation of radar detectors that have both huge military and civilian applications. Now, right now, John, the stock trades over the counter at 10 cents a share. And by the way, John, our analysts indicate it could go a heck of a lot higher than that. Your profit on a mere $6,000 investment would be upwards of $60,000.
Jesus, that's my mortgage, man.
Exactly, you could pay off your mortgage.
This stock will pay off my house.
John, one thing I can promise you, even in this market, is that I never ask my clients to judge me on my winners. I ask them to judge me on my losers because I have so few. And in the case of Aerotine, based on every technical factor out there, John, we are looking at a grand slam home run.
Okay, let's do it. I'll do $4,000.
4,000, that'd be 40,000 shares, John. Let me lock in that trade right now and get back to you with my secretary with an exact confirmation. Sound good, John?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Hey, John, thank you for your vote of confidence, and welcome to the Investors Center.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So that's an interesting clip. I'm sure many of you have seen the movie, familiar with that. Oops, sorry.
7 continents.
Familiar with the movie, have seen Leonardo DiCaprio in his finest in that. And not for a second am I condoning, you know, the activity of the folks at Oakmont Stratton in the movie. But you cannot deny that in this session that he was not sharp, enthusiastic, and an expert kind of in the language that he used. Now, a couple of things that you notice from that clip. If you've seen the movie, he came in, he's totally dressed different than the other folks in that, because this was kind of a sweatshop. But moving forward, he developed those guys into a lean, mean fighting machine sales force. a little unethical, but when you look at the bones of what they did, it was very stylish. So I'm showing you this clip because I want you to see the differentiation there. I want you to see how DiCaprio, as Jordan Belfort, commands the sales process when he talks to that person on the phone. He was in total control of it. And the guys behind him, were screaming and shouting at people. And if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. It just was a very disorganized process. So he set the standard. And I think that's really important here for us as salespeople. We need to be the experts. Clients want to hear information from us that they don't know. And that's very important. That requires us in a sales environment to be absolutely prepared. Now, I'm going to take you through a couple little buzzwords here that I use in preparation. Now, when I started in sales, and I'm a little bit of a dinosaur many years ago, there wasn't all the tools that are available to folks today. The internet has really, really stacked sales up in favor of the salespeople today. Because think about it. We can learn everything we want to know about a business before we go to see them. So who's my prospect? Who am I going to see? LinkedIn allows us that. I don't know how many of you guys looked at LinkedIn today to read my profile before I got on here. You could have done that. You could have got on and read Justine's profile before you got on here. So most people that we're going to talk to today in an organization exist out there in a professional format. And it's not creepy for us to look at this because if they didn't want it on LinkedIn, they wouldn't put it out there. But where they went to school, where they were educated, where they worked is all important because it builds a picture in our head of who the person is that we're going to sell to, what their phone number is, where they're located, the website of a company. If we don't visit the website of a company before we go sell them, shame on us because it tells us everything we want to say or see. If they're a publicly traded company, reading their annual report, or in the US here, you can read their 10K, it tells you exactly what they're doing. If you're in a financial cell like I am, it tells you their financials. So everything that you want to know. In my business, what's very important to know is what does it cost a business to borrow money? And in a publicly traded company and in most other companies, the internet allows us to figure that out. So I'm ahead of the game before I even contact. What's their mission statement? What's important to them? What charities do they support? Education level. Very important to understand who I might be going in. If I go talk to somebody who's been educated at Harvard, I'm probably going to expect somebody who's incredibly intelligent. And I don't mean that any other university is less than that. But if you've ever sold to somebody who's gone to Harvard, there's just a little difference there that I don't know what it is, but you just need to be aware of it. And anything else that could help you in the sales process, you need to be ready for. So preparedness is key.
Roger, can I
Yes.
just, are you sharing a screen because I
No,
can't? Oh, you're not.
I
That's
didn't on
okay.
that. I didn't on that one, but I'll go back to sharing for you.
Great,
So
thank you.
in addition to that, one of the other things that in terms of preparedness is your tonality and your language. These are secret weapons for a salesperson. So if you work in a corporate environment, you can kind of fall into some bad habits and traps here because organizations tend to teach and preach corporate buzzwords. In the real world, corporate buzzwords are, frowned upon by those that you sell to. So I would say to you, focus on things like enunciation. And these may seem very basic, but when you really distill it down, you'll get to see where I'm headed with this. Clarity, cadence, professionalism, positioning, as opposed to things that I think I want to avoid as a salesperson: corporate speak, acronyms, upspeak. This is a very popular one in the United States where people end the sentence on a high. I'm not sure why they do it, but they do it. It is extremely annoying if you're a purchaser on the other side, and particularly when you're selling to executives. This absolutely drives them crazy. Sales jargon. Let me circle back with when we're out with our buddies, do we use that type of phraseology? Hey, John, you know what? I don't have the answer to that question. I'm going to find it. I'll call you back. I'll email you. But for some reason, we complicate it. Scripts are horrible. If you're working off a script, that means that you don't really know what it is that you're going to communicate. You have to be able to internalize what your value proposition is and know what it will, whatever product it is you're selling. And I've sold many. So you need to internalize that. So when you need to call upon it, you draw it out. Contrived language, poor grammar. My favorite hate today, and I'll tell you this is, and I see this a lot in the States, is people pronounce words differently. Important has become important. People shortcut words. Now, these may sound like ridiculous things to you, but in the selling environment, we want to create a differentiation. We want to make sure that we're different from the other 150 salespeople that are coming in and calling on that business. Because it's very naive of us to think that we're the only one. You know, we jettison into someone's world for 5 to 6 minutes on a phone call or 45 minutes to an hour in a meeting when they have other salespeople calling on them, when they have other things going on, when they have personal lives that are intertwined with their business lives, and we're trying to make a difference. If there's no differentiation, if we're homogenized with all of the other salespeople, then there's a problem. So differentiation, are we an identical twin? You know, when I walk into a large B2B client, I know that the other payment networks have already been there. They're talking about a lot of the same things that I'm talking about. So how am I different? Let's talk about likability. People talk to people they like, but I will tell you they buy from people they trust. And this is very true in the United States in government sales. There's never a problem getting a meeting with a government employee. Why? Well, they got to fill up their calendars all day. They got to look busy, but they make decisions at a snail's pace. We want to make sure that we're a trusted advisor. Product knowledge. If you're selling a product and you don't know it or you're winging it, if that thought comes into your head, then don't take your meeting. Go back, learn your product. You want to be that person when asked a question in the meeting, you have an answer, because so many people don't know the answers and have to go off and search them. Now, is that a terrible indictment? No. Might you not know some things? Absolutely. But it is refreshing to a client when you can have a one-stop conversation. Yesterday, I had a conversation with Republic Services. I don't know, they're about 50 billion in size. They're in the waste business. And met with the treasurer yesterday. And he had a question for me on a specific to my industry about interchange. And interchange is one of those things that I know inside out. And he said, I've asked this question of 3 or 4 people and no one could answer it for me. That's a differentiation. Very important. Local knowledge. Never outstay your welcome. Know when it's time to leave. Take those visual cues from the client. And judgment and awareness. These are 2 tools in a salesperson's trick today that are very, very lacking in today's society. We've kind of dispensed with judgment and awareness. And I would tell you that judgment and awareness are 2 of the most important things that a salesperson can have. What's going on around you? What's happening? When you walk into that office, what are you seeing? Is there a crisis in play today? Have they won awards for something? To go into their lobby and sit there and not pay attention to what goes on. Who comes in? Do people sign in? Are there video cameras recording you there? All these little clues tell you a lot about the company. And they also provide fodder for you when you get into a meeting to be able to have some casual conversation with people. And awareness, how are you dealing with what they're reacting? And we'll get into a little bit of this about body language here in a little bit. But presentation skills, extremely important. Vocal production, nonverbal communication, presentation content. I will tell you that if you are presenting to prospects in the B2B space, in any space, and your presentation for an hour is more than 16 slides, you've got too much. It is just simply impossible to get through material. Now, we as salespeople want to throw up and show up. That's our charter, but we have to be very, very careful about what information we disseminate to a prospect. It has to be relevant, clear, and concise. And we have to make sure that it's something that's not causing them to go off on a tangent. Recently, I had a need to present a co-branded deal to a large entity here in the States. And my co-branded team showed up to me with a 56-page presentation for a 1-hour meeting. I said, not going to fly. We need to trim this down to 16 pages. there isn't a chance in hell you're going to get through 52 pages. And there's no point dumping all this information on the client. It might be important to us. We got to figure out what's most important to them. Little stat that I'll give you. On average, we can speak about 125 words per minute, but we can listen to 650. So that tells us that our brain is one of the most powerful tools, but it also tells us that our brain tends to wander. Now, each and every one of you have probably wandered during this presentation for a little bit. You've gone off, oh, did I feed the cat? Did I pay that bill? Am I meeting John tonight at 6:30 or 7:30? Whatever that might be. And that is because your brain has huge capability. I, on the other hand, have limited capability, and I can only speak at 125 words per minute. So your brain outpaced me. So therefore, I have to do everything in my power to make sure that those 125 words per minute on average that I speak are meaningful and impactful, so as to minimize your departure from the conversation. And that's the key, I think, when you're selling to some of these bigger companies, is you really refine down what you do. You're no longer throwing muck up against the wall. You're understanding that there's no reason to rush, that you need to do it right, not fast. Because generally when you do something fast, it's not good. And that's when our wheels come off our bus. There's common errors. Be aware of fidgety behaviors. I probably have a couple of them. Make eye contact. It's even difficult here because I'm in a virtual environment. My camera is a little bit above me and I'm looking more at the screen than I am directly at you. But in a face-to-face meeting, I would be having that one-on-one eye contact with you. Monitor your pace. Hey, so far, is everything good? Now, in a normal conversation, I would have stopped and said that here. If you guys were able to speak back to me, I would have checked in with the crowd a couple of times to say, hey, good pace so far. We're good. Everybody good. Understand it. Wonderful. Minimize your filler words and avoid overusing certain terms. Match your face tone to your intended mood. And don't tell jokes if they're not funny. But jokes are always good because they lighten and there's levity to them. But you got to be kind of sensitive here. But I throw that in because I think it's important. I think a lot of the time we can be humorous without telling a joke. So there's a lot of things that we can go. Plus, there's a lot of things that we can see. So as you guys look at me, you're looking at the visuals behind you. Half of you are probably wondering, what are those goofy jerseys hanging up behind him in his office? So I have those up there for a reason, because I want to stimulate conversation. Now, in the online environment today, we've kind of gone a little antiseptic. We put these blurry backgrounds in because maybe we're working in our bedroom, or maybe we're not in a purpose-built office like I am. But I want that visual behind because I want it to stimulate conversation. I want people to say, oh, what is that? Or how do you have that? This helps me build rapport within the sales process and helps grease the skids with conversations. In addition to that, we also have to figure out what makes up what we hear. So, the tone of your voice, people hear about 38% of that. Your body language makes up 55%. And the words, shockingly enough, only make up 7%. So when you go into a meeting, it is absolutely critical for us, the salespeople, to be spot on. But what's going on the other side of the table is equally important to us to understand what's going on with the prospect. I do a lot of boardroom selling. So when I go in, I'll have a CEO or CFO, and I'll have people from finance at the table, or treasurers and like that. And it's very interesting to see where everyone sits. Now, normally there's a couple of us go on a sales call together, and we'll divide roles and responsibilities. And this is pre-call planning that you'll go through. And I always say to the person that's with me, draw a map of where everyone is sitting. Because afterwards, I may not remember all the people, I may not remember their titles, but I do want to see who the power brokers are. Because power brokers always sit at the top of the table. It's just the way it is. And everybody will defer to a power broker. When they're asking me a question, they'll generally look at the power broker to make sure, hey, I'm not overstepping my bounds here, but I'm asking this question kind of with your permission. That's very telling to the salesperson in the process. It tells us who the decision makers are. And generally speaking, decision makers are at the top of the organization. In my world, decision makers are not people who are at a manager level. Just Nothing wrong with that, but I'm not going to invest my time in management level people if I know the decision is being made at the C-suite level. So it's very important. I may feel good talking to those people and they may feel good talking back to me, but if it doesn't get me to where I'm trying to get to, I have to critically evaluate that quickly because I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on that. Remember, most valuable resource I have is my time. I don't get any more time than they get. You don't get any more time than me. So we have to make the best use of that. Don't reinvent the wheel. Sales is not that complicated. I'll give you this stat. 46 million Americans engage in some sort of selling on a daily basis of every kind. That's selling cars or products or, I would argue little Johnny, when he goes to school and forgets to do his homework, is selling the teacher on why he forgot to do it. So we are in this world either buyers or sellers. So don't reinvent the wheel. Stay within your lines. Explain and pause when you have to. Sometimes people will not get, you'll read their face. John didn't understand that. Would you like me to explain that again? Customers will ask questions. Let them. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Remember, they can hear 650, or their brain is capable of processing 650 words a minute. Now, let me give you a little kind of importance here with asking questions. Generally speaking, there are 2 types of individuals who will sell to. So there are introverts and extroverts. Extroverts, we don't have to worry too much about. Their brain processes a particular way. I would classify myself as an extrovert. There are some HDB models you can take. I would suggest you take the free personality test, 56 questions, and discover what type of personality you are. I'm what's called an ENTJ. So an ENTJ is someone who likes to be in control as a general, and as a national salesperson, that's a good fit, okay? Because I have to move the process along with a lot of people. I got to drag a lot of people along in it. But back to introverts and extroverts. If you're an introvert and you are asked a question by an extrovert, it takes the introvert approximately 8 seconds to process the question. Now, 8 seconds in a sales scenario is a lifetime. That's about 8 seconds. Now, if you're sitting across from somebody, that can be very unnerving. So what extroverts do is when they ask an introvert a question and they don't respond, they ask the question another way. Like, hey, stupid, did you not hear me? You didn't understand it, so let me rephrase it this way. Be very careful with that. Extroverts take time to process. That's okay. Let them process. Let them come back with the response. If they don't understand the question, what they'll say is, yeah, you know what? I don't understand that question. What do you mean? But if there's a pause, use the pause. Give them that space. It helps relax the person on the other end, and it builds credibility and trust with you because they say, oh, Jane, Tom, yeah, they let me think through this. So very important that we understand all the time. A lot of the time we want our agenda in sales, but the other part of it, we have to recognize who we're selling to and what's important to them. Trust your instincts. If you think it's wrong, it generally is. And learn from your last sale. What worked? What didn't? Oh, gee, I asked that question. That person was an introvert and I stepped over them. Let me remember this for the first time. Now, I'm not saying that I was perfect the first time. I fell, cut my chin, I bumped my head. I made lots of mistakes. We call that embracing the messy. But over time, the great thing about sales is it's very repetitive. We get to do the same thing over and over and over again with our clients. So if they're a B2B merchant and we're going in, chances are we're going to repeat that over and over again with that supplier and time again. Well, we should learn from that because as we do this 5 times, 10 times, 1,000 times, we should be better at that. This is our craft. Now, liken that to a professional athlete, a soccer player, a rugby player. They practice incessantly. They do their line out throws incessantly. Whatever sport they play, they practice. Now ask ourselves this, how much do we practice? Rarely. But we get to repeat it over and over again. So our cadence every time we do it should be an element of practice for us. But we should also refine our craft in any way we can. Make ourselves smarter, listen to others that sell, observe, whatever that is. I'm not a big lover of reading books about selling because I tend to be a little cynical about that. in the sense that, that's a salesperson who writes a book, and generally what they said in 5 minutes, they write in 250 pages. So it can be extremely, extremely difficult. So there's lots of things that we can learn from in this process. Just checking there, Justine, can you still see my screen? We had one of those power surges here.
I saw the lights flashing. Yes, I can.
Yeah. All right, good, good. The beauty of a battery backup. So in addition to that, and again, we're coming close to time here for Q&A, is emotional intelligence. So the self-awareness, the self-regulation, the motivation, the empathy, the social skills. These are all things that are highly important to a salesperson, particularly in the B2B world. If you're selling into B2B executives, you really need to be high on the quotient for this stuff. Motivation is hard. A lot of the time as salespeople, we are not in an office. We might be working virtually. We may not see a sales leader. How do we build that motivation over time? Well, there's a certain amount of self-motivation that we have to have. The desire to be successful. I don't normally meet salespeople that get up in the morning and say, I want to be mediocre today. I think most of the salespeople that get up say, hey, I want to be successful at this. I want to be brilliant at this. I want to do well. I want to be the best in my organization. I want to sell the most business, whatever that is. And I think you get there through self-motivation, through practice, through awareness, through self-regulation too, knowing when you can push your limits, etc. Social skills are pretty important in today's environment. We spend a lot of our time on phones. And I would say to you, think about this. If you're at the end of your day today, how many of you logged into a news site or some sort of social media site today and spent time on that versus logging into a site that helps to improve what you do for a living? Now, exchanging some of that time might be a good choice. I say this to people all the time. If you're logged into news or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, X, exchange some of that time to research your clients on LinkedIn. I don't want to do that. Well, this is your career. This is how you make your money. The others don't put money in your pocket for the most part. So very important. High emotionally intelligent people have assertiveness, ambition, drive. They're strong-willed, they're decisive. Now, if you go out to lunch with a client and that client takes 10 minutes to order off the menu, guess what? You probably don't have a high emotional intelligence individual. It's good to know that. I'm not saying you can't sell to them. I'm not saying they're bad people because of that, but I'm saying it is important for us to kind of establish what's going on there. High emotionally intelligent people are detailed, they're careful, they're meticulous, they're systematic, they're neat. So very important. Low emotional intelligence, they're hard to please, they're critical, they're picky, they're fussy, all these little nuances that people have in the process. So these are all really complicated things that we bring into our sales process. But as we get more experienced and we start to be more aware of our environment when we're in them, these will become very clear. Nonverbal communications, very important for salespeople. Very important for us to recognize nonverbal communications from the other side of the table. What people are doing, what their posture is. When you're in an online conversation with somebody, if they're slunk back in their chair, that tells you a lot about their interest in what you're saying. If you're forward, they always teach you this when you go to an interview, never sit back in the seat, sit forward. It shows you're interested in what's being said and in the conversation. Appearance, very important. I know we've gone a lot to a casual dress code in a lot of places today, but it's very important to set the standard, as we talked about before. Hand movements. If you're someone who uses your hands a lot, I'm not saying there's a downside to that, but it can be very distracting, and you may want to video yourself to look at some of your nuances. Eye movements. Do you rapidly blink? What does it say? Does it say people you're tired, yawning? Did you get enough sleep last night? Is this meeting the most important thing on your calendar or not? Facial expressions. Some people just don't have a poker face. When they're upset, you can see it. You kind of have to guard against that. Body contact, is it appropriate to shake hands, fist bump, whatever it is? We went through this whole COVID thing. In the Far East, not appropriate to shake hands, but to present your card with two hands. If you don't know some of these customs and you sell or go to foreign countries to sell, Google, research, know what those are before you put your foot in it when you get there. In America, it's really, really important to have a good handshake when you meet people. We have a thing here called the dead fish. I'm sure you guys know what that is. When you go to shake someone's hand and it's limp, it's not the most pleasant experience. As a result, when someone comes to shake your hand, if that's a good custom for you, then great. Be available with your hand in a solid way. All right, I'm going to share one more video with you, and then we're going to open this up for Q&A. But this video is a commercial. I'll set it up for you here. And it's a large insurance company in the US called State Farm. So it was available on YouTube. I didn't steal it or anything like that. And it's the exact same conversation in two different situations. And one of the situations is a little girl, or a girl, I should say, has just received a car, her first car from her father. And the second situation is a man who's parked his car and his car has been ransacked. And the exact same wording is used by both individuals in different contexts. And I want you to see how powerful this can be and how it should make us think as a salesperson, how important our words are that we speak. So let me stop sharing here and I will get this up. Go, Justine. Here we go. It's only 30 seconds long.
Yeah.
Call you back. Is this my car?
State Farm knows that for every one of those moments,
This is ridiculous!
there's one of these.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
That's why State Farm is there.
What a day.
With car insurance for when things go wrong,
What a day!
but also here with car loans to help life go right. State Farm.
Yep. So, all right. So, a little bit of Q&A. We'll open it up for the folks online here. I'm not going to share my screen, Nadine. I'm gonna just open it up so we have an open forum. So
I think that's better, Roger. We actually have one in already, and I like
cool.
it. I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
It's from Roger, and I'll read it out to you if that's all right.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, it's from Aaron. Excuse me. He asks, "What is your most embarrassing sales moment, and were you able to salvage it?"
Yeah, great question. So I have a great one for you. So you guys have probably heard of the big insurance company Geico. So I sold Geico American Express Acceptance, it must have been about the year 2000. And at that time, my oldest son was, I don't know, he was about 2 or 3, and he was homesick from school for the day. And I was working back then, even then, I was working in a virtual environment. And I was on with the president of Geico negotiating the contract. And I had him on speakerphone, and off my office was a little bathroom. And my son was home today. He wasn't feeling good from daycare. And he went into the bathroom. And as I was on the conference call, he swung open the door and said, "Hey, Dad, can you come in here and wipe my bum?" And the guy at Geico, Bill Roberts is his name, heard it and said, "Raj, do you need to go and get that paperwork?" He said. And I said, "Bill," I said, "just give me a minute," I said. So and that brings more credence to the term embrace the messy. I've had many, many, moments in my sales career. The key is not to get too flustered. I'm not one that easily gets embarrassed, but I do anticipate the sales call. So I do get, still today, prior even to this call and talking with you guys, I have a little bit of nervous apprehension. And I think that's good. That keeps us on our toes. So, That what I would tell you was probably one. And I tell that story to a lot of people. A lot of people at Visa know that story. A lot of Amex know it too.
Yeah. It's probably a good idea, Roger, as you say, to anticipate the unexpected at meetings. As sometimes it happens, sometimes buyers, I suppose, can spring things on us deliberately, perhaps, particularly perhaps in a negotiation setting where there could be a strategic reason that something might be sprung on us. So I suppose, as you say, to remain calm is always a good first approach to these things. Roger, I you covered a lot of bases there. It was interesting. You talked about how we perceive ourselves, how buyers perceive us, how we read their emotions, how we communicate with them, and all the different facets to that. Perhaps while we're waiting for some more questions to come in there, I think I see another one, but I'll just put my one to you first. I just wondered, you talked about tonality and language and the importance of that. If you're a sales manager or leader and you have a sales team and perhaps they're operating independently, how do you ensure they're using the right language, the right tonality, and how prescriptive should you be with your team in terms of achieving a standardized approach or otherwise?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I can give you a couple of examples on that, Justine. So I had a very, very brilliant woman come work for me at Amex in the national sales role when I was a leader. And I think it's important when we're working as sales leaders to go in the field and be on the front line with our people. Our job is not to manage the quota as sales leaders. Our real job is to help in the sales process, not lead it, but help in the sales process. So I would go on a lot of calls with my salespeople. But when she was pretty young in the role, I went out with her and she was a bad up speaker. She was a really bad up speaker. Now, these are difficult things to talk about, but they're necessary if you want that person to be successful. Do I want her to continue to have this upspeak and piss clients off and not make money and not be successful? Or do I want to be tactful about it, help her through it, and make her more successful? Well, if you were to meet her today and you were to talk to her, and we're still very close today, even though I don't work there, she would tell you, hey, the best advice you ever gave me was to cut out that upspeak. And man, I worked hard on it. And she was an absolute incredible salesperson, but she was unaware of it. A lot of the time in society today, people are unaware of things until you point them out to them. Now, that doesn't mean you run in with a baseball bat and hit them on the head and say, hey, stupid, you're doing it this way. But you go in and in a tactful way say, hey, listen, here's what I've seen. I know this because I've seen others do it. And here's what I found is a good remedy to that. And I think that's what you can do. You can be very prescriptive, but they also learn by seeing. Children do this. Children learn an awful lot from their parents. They know what they're shown. And salespeople are the same. If you go out with your salespeople, if you invest the time, if you spend it, if you spend time talking to them, encouraging them, and working through this stuff, you'll get better results.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Roger. So go in and watch your salespeople in action and then act on that.
Yeah. That's not a violation. That's the role. I think there's a lot of sales managers think my job is to manage the number. And I say, no.
Okay. I just see Michael McGowan is here, who's known to this parish. Michael has a question, and I just thought I'd ask him if you want to talk, Michael. It's just about sales. Will sales be an extinct profession within a decade? And just Roger, you might like to tease that one out a bit with Michael. So Michael, by all means, if you want to expand on that a little for Roger, please do.
Michael, you're on mute there, but do you want to come off it? There you are.
Yeah, I can't
How
go.
are you?
I can't go on camera.
That's okay. That's okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in my training gear, so I can't go on camera. Yeah, I'm just I'm putting in a deliberately provocative question about.
My answer to you is I hope not. As advanced as AI is becoming, I still think there will be a need for salespeople. Let me give you my other analogy to this. So this is a terrible one, but I'm going to say it. There will always be needs for assassins in this world because there will always be need for someone to pull the trigger on a gun somewhere. That's terrible to say that, but that is kind of true in the world, right? Well, guess what? We're kind of like assassins without guns. We go out and we knock down projects and sales processes, and we go through them, and we're always going to be needed. There is always going to be a need for that personal interaction. Now, we can program a robot and auto dial, and we can send out emails, and we can do that. But until they perfect the empathy part of the conversation and how to deal with somebody when they're emotional and take them down off a ledge or deal with a problem in real time, I absolutely do not see the profession going away. There are some older professions than us out there, although we are one of the oldest professions, and I don't see those going away either. So I think we're in pretty good stead. That's just my opinion. But they will always need people like us out on the ledge. We are the lifeblood of revenue for most organizations. Well, let me go back and say that again. We're the lifeblood and revenue for all organizations. The organization might not want to admit that, but without sales, companies fail. You know, you can have the best offices, you can have the nicest people, you can have cut grass outside your office, but if you don't have any sales and any revenue, you won't be in business for very long.
That's an excellent answer. I'm not even going to borrow that. I'm going to steal it. That's okay.
You can package it up. I'm a big James Bond guy, so Justine and
Okay.
Aisling are probably cringing the fact that I used that analogy, but you know, we need someone to pull the trigger every now and again. That's why James Bond exists. You know what I mean?
Excellent.
So that's the way.
All right.
That's
Great
the way I
answer.
think it.
Great answer.
Thanks for the question, Michael.
Okay.
Now let me just see if we have any more questions. And from anyone in the audience, feel free to type one, or if you want to raise your hand and speak, by all means.
I see Aisling asked a question there about practice for how do you practice for a sales meeting. So maybe we should take a stab at that.
I missed that one. Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. Aisling, that's a great question. So, you know, there's no limit to how you can do this. So I've heard people who stand in front of a mirror practice with their spouse. So let me give you my tip. So I get up every morning and I go for a walk. I walk about 2.5 miles most mornings, Monday through Friday. And as I'm going around, my day is revolving in my head and what I'm going to say to people and how I'm going to interact with them and what the pitch is and what am I expecting? What if I say this, what will they say? What am I prepared for? And by the time I come back from the walk, I'm literally exhausted because I've gone through the day and then I have to work the day. But you need to use those times where you're free, where your mind is free to run through eventualities. You know, to walk into a meeting and not say to someone who's with you or yourself, hey, what are the possibilities here? What are we facing? You know, if we say this, what might they say, what's our strategy today? You know, we're going to go in, oh, our strategy is basic today. We're just going to go in and listen. We're just going to go in and ask questions today and write down answers. That's fine. We're going to present today. You know, if you're doing a presentation that has price on the last page, you know, well, here's a little trick. Take off the last page, because guess what happens when you go in with a presentation with the price on the last page? The prospect turns to the last page and screws your whole presentation because now they're focused on price. Don't show it. Go through the presentation and then pull out the slide with the price on it. You know, don't put your hand out to get slapped because it will. So there are little techniques that you can use along the way, but you have to think through it. This is our profession. Like, I'm a big aviation buff. Do you think a pilot shows up and not knows what the flight plan is for the day? No, they have that all mapped out. You know, they don't take off and go, okay, now let's figure out how do we get to New York? No, that's already predetermined, and so should ours. So hopefully, Ash, that gives you Ashley. I shortened her name.
There is another question here, Roger, and it is, what do you think universities can do to support sales professionals? For example, what key skills do you think junior sales professionals in particular need that universities can offer support in developing? And that's from Nora. Thank you, Nora.
Nora, great question. So first off, Nora, TU Dublin is doing a phenomenal job to bring events like this together to help people and bring professionals from the selling world to your doorstep. But let me tell you, and that's great. And I encourage TU to do as much as they can in this space. And developing a curriculum around sales, if they haven't done it already, is key. There's only a couple of universities in the US that do this. Now, let's think about this. I have a degree in marketing administration. You guys all probably went to college and have degrees in other disciplines. I don't know anybody that has a 4-year degree in sales. Now, if 46 million people in my country engage in that every day, you would think that we would address that need. We should, and there's enough there to do that. Marketing people are not salespeople. Marketing people create demand that people go in and buy. Salespeople sell after creating the need that people and address that need. So there's a difference there. Now, an awful lot of marketing degree people wind up in sales. Listen, people who get law degrees wind up in sales. People who get medical degrees I've seen wind up in sales. But as such, I think we probably need to do more, certainly in the US, about developing those curriculums. I spoke a couple of weeks ago at Bentley University. Justine, you and Aisling would know this. They're a very, very well-known business school in Massachusetts, and they do have a 4-year selling degree, and it's available. And people can attend it, and they're developing people out of that with curriculum that's just kind of like what I talked about today, except they go into 10 times more in depthness than we've done. But I think TU is got this on their radar, and the very fact that they're holding this seminar today, I think, is very important. Junior salespeople get a role in an organization, intern. If they're starting off, there are entry-level sales jobs where they can cut their teeth on. There are a lot of companies that are described as entry-level sales jobs. I don't mean retail. I mean, things in the B2B space, like the Cintas's of the world, or the Paychecks, or the ADPs, if they represent themselves in Ireland. These are all entry-level sales jobs that after 2 or 3 years, then you graduate up to a secondary company where the responsibilities may be larger and the sales process may be more complex, and certainly larger tickets. So hopefully that answers your question, Nora.
Thanks, Nora, for that question. And TU Dublin, Roger, for the record, we do offer a master's in sales, a certain follow-on program for graduates of our international selling program. It's recruiting at the moment, actually, and we have plans to launch some short programs in sales for junior salespeople within the next 12 months or so. So it is indeed on our radar.
Beautiful.
There's a question here, excuse the background noise in my place, but just a quick one. You talked about the importance of language and efficiency in terms of language. And a question from Ashley: any advice on keeping the value proposition succinct?
Oh, well, less is more is my adage. So as a salesperson, I think I used this phrase before, we tend to show up and throw up. You don't need to be sophisticated. You don't need to use the big buzzwords. You just need to be clear and concise. Often I'll go on a company's website, particularly technology companies, and I'll read through. And after reading it, I'll say to myself, what do these people do? I have no clue, because they're talking about enterprise and business and strategic, and they've got every buzzword on the planet. And yet I visit their website to find out what they do, and I can't tell. That's not good. Well, that's the same adage we need to hold as a salesperson. If we walk in and we're using our organization's buzzwords, it's buzzkill for the prospect. So I don't mean dumb it down, but I mean pare it to the point where the words that you're using are succinct and manageable. I hope today I've done that for you. I've tried not to use those cliched terms because I dread them myself. And it is hard because we're immersed in that. If we work in a big corporation, we're peppered with that on a consistent basis. So hopefully that answers the question.
That's great, Roger. Thank you. And we've come to the 6 o'clock mark. Thank you for your seminar today. I have to say, I think you're somebody with a lot of experience in sales, but it sounds to me like you're constantly focusing on improving your game, and your message about it being a practice, constantly repeating and learning from what works and what doesn't work and reinventing our approach has really landed with me, I have to say. So thanks. And there were many other little tips and insights that you presented over the past hour that were very useful. So thank you, Roger. And thank you to our guests. Just to say, this session and a large number of our other ConnectED seminar series are available on the TU Dublin website on the ConnectED seminar series page. So please do go there, and you can also sign up there for our future events. So thank you.
Yeah, have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.